I want to thank Senator Gillibrand. We both want fundamental reform. We both are working as hard as we know how to get it. We have a fundamental disagreement about how best to obtain that goal, and I'd like to go through some of that disagreement for the next few minutes. The 26 historic reforms that are in the bill are going to make our military the most victim-friendly criminal justice system in the world. In no other system does a victim get their own lawyer. In no other system will they have the protection and the empowerment and the deference that we are creating for them in this bill. In my years of experience handling these cases, hundreds of them with victims, I would have given anything if that victim had the confidence of independent advice. I think it would have made a tremendous difference in the staggering number of victims that refuse to go forward. This is the most personally painful moment of anyone's life. And make no mistake about it, no matter what we do in this chamber, and no matter what this bill accomplishes, we will never be able to get every victim to come forward because of the nature of this horrific crime. But we have to do better. Like Senator Gillibrand, I have talked to dozens and dozens and dozens of victims. I have talked to prosecutors, spent hundreds of hours with prosecutors, military prosecutors, women and men, veterans, commanders, active and retired. And just like there is not agreement among all the women in this chamber, there is not agreement among all the victims. There is not agreement among all the veterans. There is not agreement even among all the commanders, although most women commanders have acknowledged that even though this sounds seductively simple, it is much more complicated, and we will be creating more problems than we will be solving if we make the change that is advocated by Senator Gillibrand. Let's get at what we're trying to do. We have no disagreement that there are too many of these crimes and that they are not reported enough. Complete agreement. The goal here is how do we get more reporting? There is a theory that if we do this, if we take this decision away from any command at all to go forward, that will magically have victims come forward. Senator Gillibrand talked about our allies. I am grateful that we have their experience because we can look and see what happened. Our allies have done this, and not in one instance has reporting gone up. We know this is not the silver bullet because if it were, you would have seen an increase in reporting in all the countries that have adopted this system. And we know the Response Systems Panel that was put in place by the Armed Services Committee to recommend to the Pentagon changes in this area, we know they have formally acknowledged that our allies, many of whom did this to protect defendants' rights, have not seen an increase in reporting. And if the theory is that reporting can only go up if we do this, then why are we seeing a spike in reporting right now? 46% increase just this year over last year. That is because some of the military are already putting in the reforms that we are codifying in the underlying bill. They are giving victims their own lawyers. They are ramping up the protection and information and deference they give victims. That is the single most important factor, based on all of my experience, that will dictate whether a victim has the courage to come out of the shadows. And then, finally, that somehow doing this will stop retaliation. That unit's still going to know that that crime was reported. And keep in mind that currently and under our reforms, the victim does not have to report to the chain of command. Right now, the victim does not have to report to the chain of command. Many of my colleagues didn't realize that a victim has many places they can report this crime. And under our reforms, they'll immediately get a lawyer and have that level of protection immediately. And they'll have the information that they don't have to report in the chain of command. But I'm trying to understand how reporting and investigating and deciding a half a continent away, a group of lawyers making that decision somehow stops retaliation. How does that keep the people from your unit from acting inappropriately towards you because you have reported a crime? There's nothing magical about that. In most instances, the word will get out. In most instances, now, and use common sense. You're back in your unit. You have been assaulted. Which way are you going to have more protection? If a group of colonels a half a continent away are looking at the facts of the case, or if your commander has signed off? Of course, if your commander has signed off, because that sends a message to the unit. We're getting to the bottom of this. And probably the most telling fact about this debate is this happening now? Because now outside investigators investigate these cases, and outside JAGs make recommendations. We have that in our system now. So the question is, if these outside lawyers are recommending that we go forward based on their independent investigation, are commanders shutting them down? Are commanders saying we will not go forward? No one can find me a case where that happened, where the prosecutors said we need to go and the commander said no. On the other hand, over the last 2 years, 93 separate times has the outside lawyer said, you know, this case is too weak. This case doesn't have enough facts. 93 times. And you know what happened in every one of those cases? The commander said, we're going to get to the bottom of it. So almost 100 victims in the last 2 years would not have had their day in court under Senator Gillibrand's proposal. Because in Senator Gillibrand's proposal, when the lawyer says no, it's over. Whereas in our proposal, if this were to ever happen, even though we know this is not a problem now, we have review after review after review. No one is going to be able to turn a victim away from her day in justice without accountability, checks and balances, and oversight.